So about a month ago, I made a video leading up to Reg H coming out based on Galvantula and whether or not it can be a good supportive option for your team. And while I have yet to physically sit down and try out Galvantula, I do stand by what I said in that video. Galvantula is a fun option to be able to reduce speed on your opponent's side of the field, and the ability Compound Eyes is great for raising up your accuracy so you don't have to worry about moves that might be able to miss. You don't have to worry about that because you can either bypass the 100% margin thanks to the 30% boost from Compound Eyes, or you could have a little bit more accurate thunders at your disposal. But similar to my Hitmonlee video that I made when Reg H came out, how I said that Sneasler might be a better unburdened Pokemon to Hitmonlee, but they both have their niches, I think the same can be said about Galvantula. I think I found a more efficient disruption slash supportive Pokemon for your team that could potentially also function as an offensive threat. And that Pokemon, of course, is Jolteon, the electric type evolution of Eevee. What does Jolteon have that Galvantula doesn't? Well, it's accepted that it's a lot more cuter than Galvantula, that's for sure. I might be in the vast minority of people who think Galvantula is cute, and my wife would certainly have less choice words to say to me about Jolteon over Galvantula being cute for sure, because she hates spiders. But Jolteon hits harder and moves faster than Galvantula. So let's jump right on into Showdown and talk about what Jolteon has in its kit and why it can be a really fun, supportive, and disruptive Pokemon, while also potentially being able to function as an offensive option for your team. So Jolteon's stats here, it's not the most durable, that's for sure. That's one thing it does share in common with Galvantula. It's got 65 HP and 60 defense, meaning a medium hard physical hit could do a chunk of damage, which means Fake Out could be kind of bad for Jolteon depending on how you want to build it. It's also got 95 special defense, so you are a little bit more covered on the specially defensive side, but Jolteon's HP stat is really not doing it that many favors. Now, it does have a nice 110 special attack and 130 speed, which those are doing it some really good favors. Jolteon, if it wanted to, could be a nice sweeper. And that's kind of the nice alternative. You can pick and choose between whether or not you want your Jolteon to be offensively geared or supportively geared. And what it has in comparison to Galvantula stat-wise is it's got 22 more points in base speed from that 108 to 130. So with a timid nature on both of these Pokemon and max investment, Jolteon actually outspeeds Galvantula by 24 points. And it's got a higher base special attack by 13 points as well. So a neutral natured Galvantula caps out at 149, while a neutral natured Jolteon will cap out at 162, meaning Jolteon can hit significantly harder. So, as far as Jolteon's typing goes too, Jolteon only has one weakness to ground type attacks, while having 3 resistances to electric, steel, and flying. And you can honestly put an asterisk next to that electric type resistance, because depending on which of Jolteon's 2 abilities you're running, you can have a flat out immunity to electric type attacks. Jolteon's base ability is Volt Absorb. This protects you from electric type attacks, and it actually heals you by a quarter of your max HP. If Jolteon were a little bit bulkier, that would be insanely disgusting, because Jolteon would just be able to switch in on electric type attacks and preserve its bulky self. But Jolteon's glassy, so it can still switch in on electric type attacks to save your water type partners. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, Jolteon's glassy, so one advantage, though, to that is you might, depending on if you do take a Fake Out, is you might be able to switch in on an electric type move, and if you do, you might reinstate your Focus Sash. If you don't use your Focus Sash and your Sash is broken and you switch in on that electric type attack, get back up to full HP, well, now your Focus Sash will now potentially work again. So that could be really handy for Jolteon. So definitely a strong selling point, despite the fact that Jolteon doesn't have the bulk. If you run Volt Absorb, you could potentially reinstate your Focus Sash. So that is really important. And then Jolteon's hidden ability is Quick Feet. Quick Feet is the speed equivalent to Guts for the attack stat. If you have a status condition on a Pokemon with the Quick Feet ability, you'll get a 50% boost to your speed, similar to how Guts gives you a 50% boost to your attack stat. And similar to how Guts ignores the reduction in damage from burns, Quick Feet ignores the speed drop from paralysis, so that could be really nice as well. Now, I'm not the most familiar with Quick Feet and all the mechanics behind it, so you might still potentially be able to miss your turn from being paralyzed, but you at least don't have to worry about your speed stat being reduced from being paralyzed. So there is that at the end of the day. So you could technically run a Flame Orb, Quick Feet, Jolteon, and get a 50% boost to your speed. And since you max out at 200 speed with a timid nature, that 50% boost would put you up to 300 speed, meaning Jolteon could be insanely fast and could run circles around the battlefield, just taunting your opponent while it goes for whatever moves you want to use. Now, with the very first two Jolteons here, I have just 8 different support moves that I think between these 8 moves, you can pick and choose from, maybe even factor in a protect or not, and just build your ideal support / disruption Jolteon. I'm also going to talk about offensive Jolteon, but I'm going to save that towards the end of the video. So as far as options go for Jolteon for being able to disrupt your opponent, you get access to Electroweb, which is a nice base 55 powered electric type spread move that can lower your opponent's speed 1 stage. If your opponent has the ability Clear Body or the items Covert Cloak or Clear Amulet, unfortunately you won't be able to lower their speed, but if they don't have that ability or those items, you can slow them down, which could be great for Jolteon's partners. Since you do have that base 130 speed, any Pokemon that's like in the 95 to 105 range, they're definitely going to appreciate Jolteon slowing down Pokemon that might be a little bit faster than them so that they can actually get the jump and do some major damage. A good example could be Hisuian Typhlosion. Hisuian Typhlosion has a base 95 speed. If you slow something down that, say, has 100 speed, 110 speed, 1 stage, Hisuian Typhlosion is now going to outspeed them and blast them into oblivion with a Terra Fire Eruption. So that could be really fun to have in your back pocket. If you want to cut your opponent's attack or special attack in half, you could run either Charm or Eerie Impulse. Charm is a single target fairy type attack that lowers the attack stat 2 stages, while Eerie Impulse is a single target electric type attack that lowers the special attack 2 stages. This could be really good for keeping your opponent's offensive pressure in check. And depending on how your team is built, maybe you're a little bit worried about special attackers, you could run the Eerie Impulse to keep special attackers in line. You could run an Intimidate Pokemon next to Jolteon, like maybe say Incineroar or one of the 3 different forms of Paldean Tauros or Cantonian Tauros for that matter, or even Hisuian Quillfish or Overquill. You could have the Intimidate there, and then you don't necessarily have to worry about running Charm and doubling up on those 2 moves. But, I mean, Bob's your uncle. You could run both of those moves if you really wanted to, but honestly, I kind of lean a little bit more in favor of the Eerie Impulse here, since it is a -2 special attack, and you can have that Intimidate to lower your opponent's physical attackers. So you could have that, and you could also free up a move slot for Jolteon. Now, one thing that could be really spicy as well is if you wanted to run a contrary Pokemon, say Superior, Malamar, or Lurantis, you could use either Eerie Impulse or Charm in Jolteon's high speed to outspeed those partner Pokemon of yours, side target them, and then give them a attack or special attack boost depending on what Pokemon you're running. Like Jolteon being able to outspeed Superior can be really nice because you can hit your own Superior with an Eerie Impulse, and now Superior is sitting at +2 special attack, and it can double up on Leaf Storm for an extra modifier right there, and now you could be potentially sitting at +4 special attack at the end of the turn, meaning Superior is extremely fast and can now threaten a lot of Pokemon. And honestly, you could do something similar with Malamar or Lurantis. Lurantis can run both physical or special, so you could run Charm or Eerie Impulse, while Malamar typically tends to run physical, so you could run Charm to boost that by +2 attack, and then it can go for a superpower coming off of a +2 attack stat right out of the gate and go for some major damage right there. So just some food for thought. And similarly enough, fake tears can be used to lower your opponent's or your contrary Pokemon's special defense. So you could lower your opponent's special defense 2 stages or boost up your contrary Pokemon's special defense by 2 stages, which could be fun. And another thing about special defense, like with the fake tiers, is a really common Pokemon in the meta is Dondozo. And Dondozo has the ability Unaware. And Unaware is an ability that ignores the stat boosts and stat drops on your opposing Pokemon right there. So Dondozo won't take any bonus damage from an attack boosted Pokemon, or it won't really do any extra damage on a defense lowered Pokemon. But Unaware does not ignore your own stat drops. So you could soften up an opposing Dondozo with fake tears, and then Jolteon's special attacking partner could take advantage of that and do some major damage to it. It could be really fun at the end of the day to soften up a Dondozo with the fake tears. Or maybe your opponent is running something like, say, Hisui and Gudra, which likes to build up its physical defense. You can go for the fake tears to lower its special defense. Now, Hisui and Gudra might not have been the best example because it does have a base 150 special defense. But point is, lowering something's special defense and then having your partner's special attacker go for major damage, that could be really fun at the end of the day. Moving on to the second set of these moves, Jolteon also gets access to Tickle. Tickle is like the reverse form of Bulk Up. It lowers the target's attack and defense 1 stage. So again, if you're running a contrary Pokemon, specifically Malamar, this could be really nice as well, or even Lurantis, and now you're basically getting a +1 to your attack and defense, and then you could potentially go for a superpower to do some major damage, while also increasing your attack and defense 1 stage. Now, getting back into some more support options right here, Jolteon does get access to Helping Hand, which means you can give your partner Pokemon a 50% boost in damage to whatever damaging move they're going for. So that could be really good support right there for Jolteon. You could have Thunder Wave to cause paralysis on your opponent and then slow them down with the speed reduction from paralysis, and they might miss their turn, which could be really nice. And then finally, you could have Electric Terrain. And coming off of Jolteon, this could be really nice because any grounded Pokemon can't be put to sleep, so you don't have to worry about the likes of Spore or Sleep Powder for that matter. And any grounded Pokemon is going to have a boost in power to their electric type attacks, which could be huge. If you're running supportive Jolteon, I think running a Focus Sash could be a really good idea for an item, and then that way you don't have to worry about getting instantly knocked out. And Terra Ghost could be a really nice option as well, since you don't have to worry about Fake Out. And while those are two really strong resources to spend on your Jolteon, I think that could be okay at the end of the day, since Jolteon does have the potential to set up any contrary Pokemon you might want to use, or just straight up keep your opponent's setup sweepers in line, or just soften them up so that your Pokemon can do some major damage. Like maybe you're running a Choice Specs to Pokemon next to Jolteon, or a Choice Bandit Pokemon, and then depending on what moves you have, you can soften them up. Like Tickle can lower something's defense 1 stage, while Fake Tears can lower the special defense 2 stages, while Charm and Eerie Impulse can be used to lower the attack or special attack. That could be really nice as well. And maybe you're actually playing Hisui and Gudra, and while you're trying to raise up your own defenses, you could have Jolteon go for Charm just to make it so that your opponent's physical attacks aren't doing as much damage to Gudra, or you can go for the Eerie Impulse so their special attacks aren't doing that. Gudra starts setting up some shelters right there, getting the defense up, and then it can go for some major damage with Body Press down the road. You could potentially do something like that. You could also have Tickle to soften up something's defense, so again, you could do that, and it could be really nice at the end of the day. Now, let's talk about some offensive options for Jolteon. And what I was thinking is Choice Specs Jolteon could be really strong. Like, you can do a lot of damage with that Choice Spec since you're already getting a 50% boost to your special attack, and now Choice Specs are locking you into whatever the first move you go for is, but if you're knocking things out left, right, and center, you don't have to worry about switching up your moves necessarily. Now, Terra Ground could put a damper on your parade if you're locked into an electric type move, but I think Jolteon could have some fun with the choice specs here. So with that 50% boost right here, you're already maxed out at 162 on a neutral nature. If you're getting that 50% boost right here, you're jumping from 162 all the way up to 243, which is huge. You don't even really need to necessarily double up on your Terra to capitalize on your electric type stab. I think you could go for a defensive Terra, like maybe say Terra Ghost, and then that way you don't have to worry about Fake Out as well. And if you're running Shadow Ball on Jolteon, well, you're also gaining stab on it as well too. So that could put a dent in a few things, but some other moves that Jolteon gets access to is Weather Ball, which could be really fun on a rain or sun team since Weather Ball will change in type depending on the weather. If you're playing rain, you're going to get a water type attack that's base 100 power that's also getting benefited from the rain on top of that. So you're getting another 50% boost. So you're essentially sitting at 150 power. And similarly enough, if you're playing in the sun, now you have a fire type attack that's at base 100 power getting a 50% boost from the sun, so you could go from there. And technically, if you're playing in sand or snow, you're getting a rock or a ice type attack that's at base 100 power, so you could potentially have something like that. Volt Switch could be a really good pivoting move as well, and this way too, if you're worried about something switching in that might give Jolteon some trouble, and you want to go for the chip damage, you could go for that Volt Switch, break a potential focus sash, switch right out, and go from there. And a couple of other moves that Jolteon does get access to is Alluring Voice, which is a base 80 powered fairy move. It's also a sound move, which means while it wouldn't break a substitute, it'll just straight up bypass a substitute, meaning you can hit Pokemon that are hiding behind a substitute for some decent fairy type damage. Or you could also run Hyper Voice, which is a base 90 powered spread normal type option as well. And it is a sound move as well. So similar to Alluring Voice, you can also bypass substitutes with that. It's almost kind of a shame that Jolteon's hidden ability is Quick Feet instead of, like, say, Galvanize. If it was Galvanize, you could have something similar to a Sylveon with Jolteon, but for electric type attacks, because you could turn normal type moves into electric type attacks and give them a little boost as well in power on top of giving them stab. So if Empoleon can go from having Defiant to competitive in Gen 9, there's hope for Jolteon going from Quick Feet to Galvanized down the road. So, I mean, honestly, I would love to see something like that as well. And another option too, instead of necessarily Volt Switch or Thunderbolt on the electric side of the field, is you could run Discharge. Discharge could do some respectable damage to your opponent, especially behind a choice specs, and you could have a 30% chance of spreading paralysis that way, which would also slow down the targets. So that could be really nice. And if you really wanted to, you could pair Jolteon with, like, say, something like, say, a Garchomp, which is a ground type. You could run Terra Flying on Jolteon, turn into a flying type, gain a ground type immunity, and then you can have Discharge Earthquake shenanigans going on between Jolteon and Garchomp. And outside of Wide Guard, like, not a lot of Pokemon are going to be appreciating that particular combination, especially if, say, you're running the choice specs on Jolteon and maybe either a Scarf or a choice band on Garchomp. You could just go for as much offensive damage as possible. And on the note of Terra Flying with Jolteon, some other Terra options that I think could be good could be Terra Water or Terra Fire, depending on if you wanted to run Weather Ball in the corresponding weather with that Terra type, and then that way you can have stab on top of it and you can do some major damage. A lot of Pokemon love to go for Terra Grass, so if you wanted to put Terra Fire on Jolteon and have a sun boosted Weather Ball on a sun team, well, now you have very, very valuable electric type coverage on this sun team that can hit opposing water types for major amounts of damage. And one thing, as I mentioned, Dondozo is super prevalent in this meta. If you have choice specs Thunderbolt, Jolteon, and Dondozo isn't set up, Jolteon's Thunderbolt can pretty much do the majority of its HP, and even if Dondozo does get set up with Tatsugiri and gets that +2 into the special defense, a Helping Hand Thunderbolt, depending on the EV spread for Dondozo, can still potentially be a 12% chance to get the one-shot. Just some food for thought. Helping Hand Choice Specs Jolteon can almost one-shot a non-terastallized +2 special defense Dondozo. Look up the calc. It's there. I found it. It's beautiful. Actually, I'm just going to show you right quick here. So we're going to jump right on over to the damage calc right here. So a Dondozo with 76 EVs into the special defense and 4 HP. This is the Reg G offensive sweeper Dondozo. If you have the non-Terra Dondozo right here, and you have the Thunderbolt on Jolteon, with a choice specs, you're already sitting at a guaranteed one hit KO with 115%, maxing out at 130. If Dondozo decides to get the Tatsugiri set up, they get that +2, you go down to 58% minimum with Thunderbolt. If you go for the Helping Hand, like maybe say you have an Indeedee next to it or a Torkoal next to your Jolteon, you're going up to a minimum of 85.8%. That's a lot of damage to do to a Dondozo, and you can still potentially get the high roll of 101%, meaning you do have that 12.5% chance. If Dondozo decides to say go Terra Grass, while say you're playing in the sun, you have that Weather Ball right there. Helping Hand Weather Ball is a 96.4% chance minimum, and on top of that, I have Terra Grass currently selected for this Jolteon just to help deal with the Earthquake matchup. I also just realized I have this set to singles and not doubles. If you have Terra Grass, Earthquake's doing a minimum of 19 to 22%. So despite only having... This is as if there's no investment there. Let's put the +2 there. You're still losing about 40-ish% minimum from an Earthquake in a double battle, but that's a resisted hit right there. Dondozo trying to hit you with the Earthquake might as well try to be hitting you with a Wave Crash instead in the sun, meaning you could potentially switch something in, like say maybe you have a Storm Drain Pokemon like Gastrodon on your team. That could be wild too. Back to my point though. I have Terra Grass selected. I have Weather Ball, Terra Fire Weather Ball, or I have Fire type Weather Ball. I'm about to turn it into Terra Fire. Right there, Helping Hand, Sun Boosted Weather Ball does 144% minimum. That's with Helping Hand. Without Helping Hand, it's 96% minimum. I think it could be okay to deal with Dondozo with Jolteon potentially. Like, that might be a great means of being able to get around that. It doesn't matter if you set up, if I can just do that much raw explosive damage to you. Anyways, point is, I like Jolteon. Anyways, guys, I've rambled on long enough. At some point, I do have to sit down and review the footage here. So anyways, let me know what you think of Jolteon down in the comments below. If you liked seeing Jolteon get discussed and you want to see other evolutions, by all means, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear from you as well. And if there's anything else you can think of too, like something that I might not have missed, or something that I might have missed, or that might not have covered, be sure to let me know, because not every Pokemon is perfect. Jolteon might be pretty darn close, but I could have overlooked something too, and if I did, be sure to let me know, call me out on that, and then that way too, I can always edit something into the description as well, addressing that too. Anyways, let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.